Hey, all, welcome back to Big Shoulders, the video podcast about the second city that is second to none.
Hey,
Today is another great day for me as a fan. We have brought back so soon the real power players in the Chicago influencer sphere. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back Dario and Sarah, 77 Flavors of Chicago.
hey, hey. We like recurring. Are we like main characters now? Like,
No, I'm gonna have to like put y'all on the payroll at something.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like this is like twice in 2 weeks or so.
2 weeks. Yeah,
But thank you for coming back. This was something that this particular topic, this particular pod today, was something when I thought of it, I'm like, okay, there's only two people that I could possibly think of that I definitely have to have in on this. I mean, I could have talked to myself on this one, but I think it's really important that the up and coming Chicago influencer scene, of which you guys are clear leaders in, um, and a voice that's developed. You guys have eyes on you. You guys are out there doing it. But most importantly, is your actual Chicagoans in Chicago with boots on the ground, ears to the winds, and you know what really goes on. And one of the things that you deal with as a Chicagoan is we're the only city in the country, maybe next to Detroit, but
yeah.
in terms of major cities that do get major media play, that are major media hubs, we're the only city in the country that is, as far as I'm concerned, as demonized as we are. We're the only city in the country that is constantly on offense and has to, yeah, but we're
Yeah.
the only ones that have to do that. And so I wanted to talk with you all today basically about Chicago and the media. I was going to frame it Chicago versus the media, but it's not always like that, and it's not always negative. But we do have our share of, shall we say, uh, history with
Yeah.
the media. And frankly, you guys are a part of media,
Yeah.
and most importantly, you're part of Chicago media. And I wanted to engage with you guys on this one, and I wanted to cover the good, the bad, the ugly, but also the great. It's I don't want it to be I don't want us to reproduce what our national media does and just focus on the negative because we know better.
Yep.
But in I guess to start it out, kicking it over to you guys, what would you say right now is the biggest strength going for Chicago in media, and what is still the thing or things that maybe need to be corrected or maybe just flat out called out?
I would say honestly, social media. I think we can scrutinize social media in a numerous different ways, right? However, in Chicago's case, you got a very clear line, good and bad, right? There's the bad social media that's just going to be like you just perpetuate, the things that they want to perpetuate. But then you have a pretty strong force that is saying no, no, and kind of using social media to our advantage because we can move faster, we can be in location, we can dispel a lot of those rumors without all the red tape quicker than a lot of things. So I would say our biggest strength right now is the fact that we're starting to find our footing with social media presence.
I think the funniest thing that happened like last week, maybe, sorry to date this podcast, but this song went viral and it's about Chicago. It's the guy that plays, is it Stevie?
It plays Steve on
On
Stranger
Stranger
Things.
Things. He came out with this song, and part of it is about Chicago. So like Chicago influencers were using it on TikTok as the audio for a lot of like their Chicago love videos, like what they love about Chicago. And so the song went viral, and people were like, I was kind of like scrolling through the comments on some of these videos, and people are like, "This is what Chicago looks like."
Yeah.
Like that's insane. It's
Yeah.
so like maybe I should come to Chicago. Like,
Yeah.
and then this whole thing came about of like people, content creators and influencers talking about, oh, I want to move to Chicago, and people were like, no, 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 no,
Yeah.
don't come here. Just
And
enjoy. But it was
yeah,
just funny.
and the interesting thing about that is I love to look at the data behind the things. And that song came out 2 years ago. That song came out 2 years ago and just blew up literally March 1st. March
Wow.
1st this year. And the interesting thing about that is not only did it just blow up here stateside, but it took off internationally.
Yeah.
And here's what that tells you, and this is why Sarah and I really, really enjoy what we do. We have a lot of reach and a lot of misnomers outside of this country, that have to be dispelled also. And the fact that there's so much love for Chicago that it reached charts 2 years later in other countries, that says something, right?
I feel like the tide is shifting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Because of us, but not us, but like social media.
Social
But
media.
because of you, so much because of you guys, right?
I mean, we are. I feel like we're part of a very large class of content creators that came about at the same time during the pandemic that kind of like just did so much good coverage of Chicago. I mean, Block Club has a great podcast called
Around the block, on the block.
Yeah, they Jacoby Cochran does CityCast Chicago, which yes, it covers a lot of like the day-to-day news, but there's a lot of positivity on that podcast and like truth about what's actually going on, as opposed to just like using the clickbaity phrases. Chicago History Podcast, Tommy is like amazing. He does he does a ton of great Chicago content. There's so many Chicago content creators that are I mean, Black people outside, they are trying to push people to see that there's a lot of beauty in the Midwest. You don't have to be in California, you don't have to be in Colorado to be like hiking and like going on like you can do that in the Midwest. So there's a ton of these like content creators that we've become very good friends with, and some that we've just watched from afar. That like, obviously you like everyone is so busy you can't just be around everyone, but then there's people that are Chicagoans like yourself that aren't in Chicago that still like spread that knowledge and that love. And so like I really think it's such a powerful tool that you can't keep telling lies when the truth is quickly snappable. Like I can actually go outside and show you that what you're saying is incorrect.
Yeah.
And so
I think we had since the last time we're on the podcast, kind of a lot's happened. We we had one of our listeners from Poland come and
I heard about that.
Yeah, and literally used our podcast as an itinerary, and which was it's anytime we hear those type of things about the podcast, it just doesn't even feel real. However, that just shows you the power of social media and the power of truth. You know what I mean? Like people that are, that are listening, and I feel like the world is ready for it. The world is ready to hear this Chicago success story. You've heard so much bad. I'd imagine, outside of these four walls of the United States, you're probably like, it can't be that bad. There's just no way. Like I feel like I would say that, and you only hear one thing. But it just couldn't be that bad.
But realistically, the only experience that people not living in Chicago have about Chicago is like movies. Like they don't even experience TV because like no international news station is reporting on local Chicago news. You know what I mean? So like all you're seeing is what you see in movies. And for a very long time, early 2000s and 90s movies about Chicago were very violent. And like, so that is the only thing that was portrayed. And so, yeah, it was. I mean, it was given a nickname that I hate to repeat and just will not.
Yeah, no, I don't either. In fact, it's interesting. If I can interject, I tried to watch said movie that has that negative moniker. Yeah, and I had a real I had a tough, and it's because I don't want to name names. It's actually a director that I love. I love Spike Lee. I recently rewatched a bunch of his movies. I rewatched. Back to back, I watched Malcolm X. I watched The Five Bloods, blew me away. I rewatched what was the other one? Do the Right Thing. He's one of my favorite directors. He has such a unique lens. He's such a creative, fun guy. I love his work. And then I tried to watch that other movie, and I was just the beginning of it. Like, there's something he leads with stats, which I understand.
Right.
But those stats really, really need to be couched in context. And that was really missing. And even though it was a creative film, I appreciated him redoing Lysistrata, all of those things. It really was not to me, it felt that there was a lot of the sympathetic, the good, and the great missing from
Yep.
that film. And
There
I
was no
don't know
context. Yeah.
why, I just, again, adept, talented, probably genius filmmaker.
Yep.
And so that's why I was disappointed that
Yeah.
this is not the city that I'm from.
Right.
This is not the city that I know. And I know you're trying to send a particular message, but you're sacrificing the other truths
Yep.
to that message. And that really, like, it really hurt me. Like, I got to the end of that movie and like, I was sad. Like, I had to go walk my dogs for like an hour. Like,
Yeah.
it was rough.
Yeah.
Because we know different. And to the points that you guys just made, there's nothing wrong with social media.
Mhm.
There's only what you do with it. Social media is
Mhm.
a
It's
powerful
just a tool. Like I
You
can
guys
do,
have proven,
you know what I mean?
and others have proven
Yeah.
that when you can put the truth out there and you can show the beauty and the
Mhm.
goodness in the heart, nothing can beat that, because nothing can defeat the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what's beautiful. Is it used to be, there was an old saying, I think it came out of World War II, that a lie gets halfway around the world before the truth gets a chance to put its pants on.
Yeah.
And the antidote to that now is social media and folks like y'all that can just, oh, you think you know Austin? Watch this. Hop on the train, get out there, and start. Right, no, these are great people doing their best. They've got great food, whatever it might be, or name your neighborhood.
Yep.
And it's so easy now to counter narratives from people who, if they live in the city, never leave their neighborhood, or probably don't live from the city and are just trying to capitalize on clicks or views or whatever it is. And that's what's so beautiful. It's beautiful to, as being a lifelong Chicagoan who has always felt that I have to constantly, but if, that I don't have to do that as much as I used to, because I can just send videos that you guys made or videos that somebody else made, or literally take California family of mine that have never been and walk with them through the South Side, through the West Side, through all these places, and be like, how safe do you feel? I feel fine. All right then. All right then. And it's so powerful, and it just feels so good to finally have that. I feel like Chicago is being vindicated on a level that we've never really had before. It used to be whatever the national media said about us, unless somebody traveled from wherever they live, we couldn't bridge that. And that's changing now.
I think part of the responsibility, obviously the responsibility is on like whoever's creating the content, but also it's also the responsibility is on the consumer. So like if you're all you're consuming is negative content, then it's going to continue to push that for you. So like if you are giving voice to the people that are constantly shitting on, like, again, like I also want to, we always say this, but like I'm not saying there isn't anything wrong in the city of Chicago of 3 million people. You know what I mean? Like it's the third largest city in the country. Of course, there's shit that needs to be fixed.
Sure.
But I think the difference is, are you criticizing from a place that is constructive and you want it to be better, or are you just criticizing because it's funny and you're trying to get your jokes off? You know what I mean? Like, why are you just trying to get your video to go crazy because you just shit on a neighborhood that actually has decades of organizations trying to change that narrative so that businesses can open there, so that they're comfortable being in that space? Like, it is so dangerous and I think of like, comedy is like one of the largest industries that in terms of entertainment that came out of Chicago, right?
Sure.
And so like to think of all the Chicago comedians that came out of Chicago that have told so many stories that were so fabricated and kind of like salt and peppered to be super problematic to like the narrative of Chicago, just because you knew that shit was gonna be like what people would want to hear because it's so outrageous and half the time not true. Like I don't want to name names specifically on comedians, but like we know who those comedians that came out of Chicago are that still make jokes about Chicago that are like
and probably haven't lived in Chicago for decades.
Decades.
And again, I'm not going to ever give a hard time to people, because again, I'm one of them. I split my time between LA and Chicago because I kind of have to be out here for certain things. That said, the point you made, I think, is that's the key, is what is the context and where's the criticism coming from?
Mhm,
If
mhm.
it's me or you guys talking about, okay, you know what, we really need to fix X, we
Oh
really
yeah.
need to, like there are communities on the south and west sides that have historically been neglected, have been asking for funds for
Mhm.
however long,
Yeah.
and they're not getting listened to. But now,
Yeah.
but now with social media, they're able to get it out. They're
Yeah.
literally able to show schools that are falling apart. They're able to show streets that haven't been, repaired in years, and
Yeah.
we're able to shame some of our government now, and we're able to get things moving, whereas we couldn't
Yeah.
before. That's
Yeah.
very different. That's not showing somebody's warts and just saying, "Ha ha."
Right.
Very
Right.
different from, to your point,
Yeah.
the entertainers or the comedians, especially the ones from
Yeah.
Chicago, that are using the
Wild.
city
Mhm.
as a punching bag for
Right.
their own advancement, which is disgusting.
Yeah. I think the best example of an organization that is working towards change and like kind of not criticizing, but like constantly looking for things. It'll make sense when I explain. So Elevated Chicago is this organization that basically works around one of their projects is development around transit. So like if you are, let's say that a transit stop, a blue line stop somewhere in Austin, right? If I
Mhm.
get off the blue line, what's around me? Is there a coffee shop? Is there a restaurant? Is it dirt? Is there nowhere? Am I getting off in the middle of the highway? Am I walking 5 minutes to get into a neighborhood?
Mhm.
Versus if I get off the Brown line in Lincoln Park, I'm hopping off the train. There's a coffee shop, a restaurant, a vet,
A
like all these.
residential neighborhood, right?
Right. So
Right.
like Janice, who runs the program, but also runs the TikTok page, does this thing of, can I walk there? So like she'll get off at like a green line stop and she'll say, what do I see on my way to this restaurant that I'm walking to, right? And so she'll talk about the sidewalk. She'll talk about, and then people are like, like they've never been, for example, by outside of the University of Chicago campus, right? Like anywhere south of that. That's
Mhm.
their last green line stop. And
Right.
the difference between that and like the next stop is astronomical. And so
Mhm.
she's like, these are the things that we need to bring attention to, because when a business comes to invest, they're not going to want to be like, the beautification of these stops is important. And that's something that I had never even thought of. And like we had traveled all over the city. And so when we talked to her and we had her on the podcast, it was truly eye-opening, because they do all these things of like they have murals, they put art in the stops, they give tax breaks and funding for organizations that want to build near these stops that don't have anything around them. And so like, yes, they are criticizing in a way that the fact that the city isn't helping develop these areas, but they're also coming with solutions. So like
Right.
yeah.
And that's probably, if there is, like, I think back to like when I was a teenager, I think back to when I was a kid. If there's one thing that I feel really has changed, and probably is the maybe the most powerful um, type of change that can happen, is exactly that
Mhm.
we're incentivizing people in those places to revitalize. Like there's a big difference between gentrification and
Right.
revitalization, and I want there to be more conversations about that.
It's community
Obviously,
engagement.
you
You
don't
have
want
to
to
ask
push
them.
a Whole Foods in there and
Right.
push everybody out, because
Mhm.
who can afford that Whole Foods? I mean, I can barely shop at Whole Foods. It's But if you give people in those neighborhoods, like you said, the tax breaks, the support, maybe you don't have to pay all these permitting fees or all
Yeah.
these licensing fees. That's different. That's a revitalization. That's
Mhm.
giving the people in those neighborhoods, in those regions, the ability to build what they would want to build anyway,
Right.
as opposed to pricing them out and pushing
Yep.
them out. That's
Exactly.
really, really important, because it's the people in those neighborhoods, and people like Elevated is fantastic, because yeah, they can show firsthand. Oh yeah, by the way, those of you who are afraid of X, Y, and Z, actually, we went to Griffith or Garfield Park today,
Mhm.
and yeah, we found this soul food place, we found this cafe, we got amazing tacos here.
Yep.
There, we found some live music, whatever it might be. That's way better than just, okay, we're gonna drop. I don't know. I mean, yeah, maybe a warehouse would be good, but you know what I mean. Is
Yeah.
is arming the people who are already there with the tools to
Exactly.
build it back the way they want.
Yeah, there was so in Pilsen there's this restaurant or bakery that just opened up, and the people the people kind of vandalized the building 2 weeks after they opened. Basically called out
They
gentrification.
spray painted
They
the
spray
windows.
painted the windows and said, "Get out." Now, here's the interesting thing about that is that even here there's a misunderstanding because the person that owns it is Latino,
Uh,
and Pilsen heavily Latino population,
yes, yes,
and so the understanding. I think you see certain things, and
right.
we're in our communities. We're so the disinvested communities. They're so
Hmm.
not used to seeing good, positive things happen that the judgment is even clouded there. And and all that comes back to the positivity and the knowledge that we have to give to the communities. Like you said, we can go in and revitalize without gentrification, but we have so much of that history to kind of like ease over with people to be like, hey, this isn't gentrification. Trust me, this is a good thing to
Right,
build up and put things back. And so that distrust it stems a long way. And
right.
part of the reason why we feet to ground on the podcast is we want to show that we can walk around in these areas, and that was kind of like the message without being said. We
Right.
just go out here and we talk and we'll show you different things, some of which doesn't even pertain to the episode itself, but we're
Hmm.
going to show you, and it's just visuals that you can see. Oh wow, they went, even if somebody that lives there, oh, they went by my place that I always go to, or that's the shop that it's a good image to have, to see people of color, right, walking on the street with stuff that is fun and not talking negative, not making anybody feel uncomfortable. And then here's the icing on that cake is you talk to people from the community area. You give them the
Yes.
microphone. You know, people might look at us like we're professionals and things like that. We are just as important as regular people as you
Hmm.
are. So here, let us give you the mic and you tell us about the neighborhood and the community area. I think that's where the advantage comes with a lot of social media now, and kind of the direction that you have to go, because we're also fighting, like you said, we're fighting the news. We're fighting outside sources that can speak to people faster than we can. So the
Right.
only way that we can move as fast as we can is not miss a week. Us in particular, right? We don't miss a week. We just make sure we put out some stuff every week. Every day we have some content, something that's Chicago based. So not a day goes by when you say, "Hey, look, what's going on now?" You know what's going on.
And then
Right.
I feel like in our real life, a lot of Chicago content creators are just regular people. Like
Yes.
Chicago isn't like LA or New York in terms of like content creation. Like people don't quit their jobs to become content creators in Chicago. Like I,
Right.
I have not a single person that I know that has like a podcast or has
Right.
quit their job to do that. Maybe like a couple, but like genuinely these are regular people that will go into these neighborhoods, like will experience it. I know, of course there is um a specific demographic that will like stay in their neighborhoods, but most people that want to change the narrative, that are working towards that, are actively being in these neighborhoods and going to these events all over. But yeah, I mean, honestly, who, like I said last time, who's watching the news? Like, who's what?
Right.
People not that don't live in the city. Like, I get my news from CityCast and Block Club. I'm not watching ABC 7. Like,
Right.
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 I'm
Right.
just
And
not.
that's again, everything that you guys do and everyone that you guys feature is grassroots. It's
Yeah,
the business owners in that neighborhood. It's the advocates in that neighborhood.
mhm,
It's the people that live in that neighborhood, and
exactly.
that is truly um, it's sort of invincible in terms of, okay, yeah, any news source can say whatever it wants, but when you get down into the nitty gritty and you talk to the real people that are there
Yeah.
every single day, nothing competes with that. And that's
Mhm.
it having a hard time finding the words for it.
I like the
It's
invincible.
it is, it really is invincible because again, we already have a surplus of negative coverage.
Yeah.
And I do think that just a little, a little bit of sugar goes a long way.
Yeah.
And even though, like, say, y'all have only been around, what has it been, 3 years?
3
4?
years.
Not even.
Okay,
Not
so
even 3
3
years.
years, it feels, and because I've watched everything you guys have ever done. I started watching you guys when you were doing it from your living room. And I just, again, I was just looking for Chicago content. I was intensely homesick and couldn't get home for, I can't remember, whatever reason. I think maybe we were still locked down, maybe because it was like about 21 when you guys started, right? Okay. And I'm just like, I need to like go home and kiss the concrete. And I couldn't. And I'm like, and
Wait
then I
for you to
found you
visit,
all.
by the way.
And I was like, okay, it felt like I was in your living room with you guys, just hearing you guys like cover all this stuff. I've learned more about probably Chicago history from you all and from Tommy, probably than I did when I was at the University of Illinois at Chicago taking classes. And that was what made it fun. It wasn't just like, you guys can talk shit, you guys can eat delicious food, and while you're doing it, you're educating me. And that is way more. I remember that, frankly, family members of mine that I've sent your stuff to remember that way more than that negative headline.
Yeah.
Because they remember the warmth, they remember the fun, they remember the laughs, they remember the
sad.
shit talking, and then they remember the lesson of, oh, okay, this is, wow, Maybelline was started in Chicago. It's like, really? We invented the fire pole? Hang on, wait a second. Brownies? For real? You know, all of that stuff that lives deeper in your psyche than a lot of this other stuff.
Yeah, that's a truth, and thank you for acknowledging that. One thing that I will say also with all that you said, it took us a little while as creators to kind of understand that power that we had, right? And because I think, going so long, we're green, right? We were green for so long. And a year and a half, 2 years in, that's when we started to have that, okay, we have a platform. The benefit of that is if we actually use that platform, we've said and we joked a lot, you've heard us, we joke on the podcast. You really can't stop us on the podcast. We can say whatever we want to say. And I think that's the it's a catch-22, right? With podcasting these days. But
anyone can say anything.
Anybody can say anything. But in our case, we have the ability, talking about the third largest city in the country, and in a top 15, 20 city in the world, people wise, right? That's a big responsibility. You get the people's ears. So I feel like people realize, okay, well, what are they talking about, right?
And you can go fact check it and it's going to be right. That's the difference. Yeah. The funniest thing is people that throw out these like statistics. They're like, yeah, but it's it's like the whatever, like top 15 most dangerous. Okay, but like, what does that mean?
Yeah, right.
What does that mean? Right. What does that mean? Like, break down that. What does that statistic say?
Yeah.
Like, I even, funny enough, I got a call to be polled the other day, and they asked me a question. They said, "Do you think immigrants are a problem?" I was like, "What does that mean? What do you mean by problem?
Right.
Like, is it like something we need to solve? Like, we need to help them, or a problem like we need to get rid of?" So like, a lot of the times these statistics and like most people think Chicago shouldn't. They don't want to live there. Where did you get that from? You know what I mean? So like, that's my problem with like news polls and like news numbers and statistics. You can play with those numbers. However, you can phrase your question in a way that like I can get the answer that I want at the end of the day. So like, that's why it's
a leading question. And you're right. You hear a question like that. It's like you're talking about immigrants like you're like it's a blight, like it's a disease. Do you agree with the flu? Do you like the flu? Well, no, I don't like. Yeah, it's so naked in its attempt to paint something a certain way that it's like, okay, you're not even respecting my intelligence.
Right.
I'm not going to deal with this.
Yeah. I told her, I was like, I don't know how to answer that question, but if I can provide feedback, clarify it or get rid of it, because that is a baiting question. Like, what are you trying to ask me?
Like, are you talking about immigration reform? Could we be doing immigration better? What is the perceived problem with the immigration process now? Like, yeah, you got to drill down on something like that. That is very,
it's
way
very
too wide and way too
dangerous.
Super dangerous.
It's very dangerous, and here's why it's dangerous, right? And this is something that people don't want to talk about. But again, when you do research, you're very knowledgeable, right? We talk about all this immigrants and we don't like the immigration. A lot of people don't realize that Chicago has the second highest population of Polish people
Yes.
than Poland. Poland
Yes.
is the
Warsaw
only
is number
is
We
one.
have
the
the
only
we have the highest concentration of Poles outside of Warsaw.
yes.
So it's interesting. So now I would want to re-ask that question.
Yeah.
Oh, how do you feel about immigrants?
Yeah.
Well, suddenly it's like, when is it like, well, exactly. And I don't want to talk about certain politicians,
Right.
but certain politicians don't seem to have a problem with the immigration process when it's Swedish people.
Yeah, right.
But when it's everybody else, oh, suddenly it's a problem. It's like,
Yeah.
fuck yourself, man.
I even think we're top, I want to say top 5 or top 3 maybe in checks. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like and so when you that's a loaded question to ask, right? And it's a very dangerous question to ask because it's not that we don't like immigrants, like the people.
It's a city built on
it's a
immigrants.
city built on
Right.
immigrants.
Like,
Right.
what do you mean?
Yeah.
Every single neighborhood literally has buildings with specific languages carved on them, whether it's German, Czech, Spanish, Polish, like it's the idea that we're full. It's like, no, that's not how it works.
Yeah, no.
And in
Literally,
Chicago especially, there isn't a Chicago story that I know of that isn't intrinsically tied into an immigrant story. I mean, even if you're not dealing with contemporary, like sort of the contemporary, let's call it a diaspora of immigrants from Central and South America, the Middle East, Africa. The further back, it's always going to be, okay, now it's Irish, Italian, and Jewish. Okay, now it's Czech, German, and Hungarian. Like you're never going to come to the end of that thread.
Right.
And all they're doing is they're just using these statistics to kind of like turn us against each other.
That's
You
it.
know what I mean? Like they ask that question so then they can report 50% of Chicagoans don't want immigrants or think immigrants are a problem. But like, you know what I mean? So like that's why it's hard to trust traditional media at this point because one, we know they're all run by the same people. Like it's the same.
And they have to compete with the internet.
Point.
So it's almost they almost have to become more clickbaity to hold on to the audience that's left because they've alienated so many people.
For sure. And like you fearmonger people that that live right outside of the city to just hate the city. And that's just like the wildest, most dishonest.
And I think that's that's probably the wildest, scariest thing is because when you talk about Chicago as a city, third largest, right? When you talk about Chicago as a metropolis, I mean, it's a pretty large metropolis, right? It's
huge.
It's huge. And those people, what we want to say about is 3 million here in Chicago, 2.7. You probably got like another 7-8 million outside, 6 million outside of Chicagoland. You got that many people that are that close to us that are scared and also missing out on culture, right? You're missing out. Part of the reason we love to travel, part of the reason travelers love to travel is because it gives you something that you don't have in where you're from, and that's knowledge, right? That's knowledge, and that's the understanding. And if you live Naperville, right? You live in Naperville, you live 30 miles from Chicago, and you don't go because you're afraid of what somebody in California or New York or Florida is telling you, Texas is telling you about a place you can go and verify yourself.
Right.
You're doing.
No, I was just gonna say, like that's one, you're giving away your judgment to somebody else who doesn't know. And I almost wonder, like, I'm always extending an invitation to somebody who has never been to Chicago. I will write you an itinerary. I will help you sidestep all of the touristy shit. I will take you to the neighborhoods. I will do anytime. I wonder, those type of people in particular, I don't know if you'll ever change them. And I say that because I have some family in Naperville, and by the way, I'm not shitting on Naperville. I don't believe I shit on other people's cities. And I know you guys aren't, but I know that there are people that there's some comedians that I follow that are Chicago based, that it's always the odd man out is always from Naperville. Naperville, love my family that's down there. But I will tell you, I have a family member who's been in Naperville a very, very long time.
Mhm.
And this particular family member talks about Chicago like it's the late 1930s. And I have to tell this family member, I'm like, okay, you know me. We're from there. Like you know the city. It's like, did you forget? Like it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like if I and you trust me, right? If
Yeah.
I really thought it was dangerous, do you think like someone posted something about, wow, you went to downtown at night? I'm like, you like, yes, I went
Yeah.
downtown at night. I've gone to Hyde Park for dinner at night. I've gone to the far west side for food and drinks at night, and I've never had a problem.
Yeah.
I would never lie to you.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Fear is a very powerful tool.
yes, and
And
it's there's going to be that percentage of people that we're probably never going to reach, but
Mhm.
I think we're reaching more people. One of my
Yeah.
favorites, is we were talking about immigrants, and one of my favorite stories that it happens repeatedly, and I've really noticed it tick up, frankly, over the last 10 years, is meeting people in Chicago. I have a friend who's from the UK. He's from London, and he's lived in Chicago now 20 years, adores it, will never leave.
Mhm.
When I drove rideshare in Chicago, I met a couple from France that lived like right at the city limits of sort of like Northwest Chicago
Yeah.
and adored the city. I have had friends from Australia that have come in, and they were actually on their way to somewhere else, somehow had like a day layover. Something happened. And they're like, well, screw it. We're not going to sit at O'Hare. So they got on the train, God bless them, got on the blue line and went into the city. They went downtown. They were so impressed within
Yeah.
2 hours. They canceled their trip to where they were going. And I won't say where they were going, but they stayed in Chicago for like 4 or 5 days, were blown away. And now their daughter goes to school in Chicago and is
Wow.
engaged to a Chicago guy. So again, if people are intellectually and morally honest and are willing to engage the real Chicago, we win.
Yeah.
For sure.
We win.
1,000. All you have to do is experience it.
That's
I
all.
haven't met a single person that lives here and experienced Chicago that hates it. If
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
being honest,
Yeah.
truly,
Right.
like everyone that lives here loves it and wants to live here.
Yeah. So we're thinking about one of our next moves to kind of like expand here for 77, and doing some research we realized I saw that Chicago gets roughly inside the United States from within we get about 40 to 54 million people, right? Visit tourists.
Yes.
New York at its highest, I believe, got 63. So that's not that big of a difference,
Yeah.
right? That's
No.
not that big of a difference. Now here's the other part of that. Chicago is in the top 10 with just over 1 million tourists outside of the United States. New York being number one. And so where am I going with that number, right? That's a million people that we get to impress per year.
Yes.
You know what I mean? If we think about it that way. And how do you our thought process now is taking that numbers, how do you understand those people and reach more people like that million, right? That you got for that year, right? Because one can turn to two real quick,
Oh, yeah.
and if they spread, it's something that has to be worked more without trying to fight, the
Right.
the Chicago, the inside media. But that's a demographic that you can get, because if you start changing the world and then we become a world-class destination.
I don't know why they wouldn't want that to happen.
Yeah, right.
Like, why
Right.
would
No,
they want
everybody
the
benefits.
narrative?
And this is the thing, is the truth is we already are a worldwide destination.
Yeah.
It's something I never really understood growing up. And it's, again, I think it goes back to Chicago has always, at least from my viewpoint, we've always been really focused inside. And it's we've always known how dope we are. We've never felt the need to tell other people. And it's only been maybe in probably the last maybe 5 to 7 years where we've realized, oh shit, we could tell other people about this.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that I think we can learn from LA and New York is LA and New York are two cities that are only happy to tell you how great they are.
Right.
You know, and there's no reason that Chicago can't do the same because we have
There's no reason for them to say that, but
you know, and it's one of those things where it's like, okay, we need to be our own hype men and hype women like they are for their cities.
Yeah.
You know, and because there's so much. That's the one thing that and I don't want to derail this thing we got going, but and I won't name. There was about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, somebody who started around the same time as you all did, and this dude, mega talented, I believe, studied cinematography at Columbia College, was just, and I fell in love with this dude and his girlfriend. He was born in Chicago, was here till he was 8. Then his family moved to Florida. He came back for school in Chicago and stayed. Yeah. And again, he fell in love with his birth town and started cranking out some of the most visually fun cinematic videos, and was following something similar to what you all would do, you know, food and history, not to the depth that you guys do it, but you know, it was more, I guess, more classic influencer sort of look. And but was I was so happy that we had this guy because he was going to reach, I hate to say this to make myself sound old, reach the kids. You know, he was going to reach people that are way cooler than I am. And it was fun and it was cool. And he was hyping places and he was willing to get like down in it. Like he was going to Lem's, he was going to Beto and Nick's, he was going to places that, you know, it's easy to cover Lincoln Park, downtown, you know, the 5 big ones that everybody knows. And he went beyond that. And so I really appreciated it. And then we hit about 2.5-year mark. And he started cutting out, he would give us updates. He cut out the history stuff because it was kind of tanking his views. I'm like, okay, fine. He doesn't want to do that. He's more of a visual storyteller. Cool. And then he started doing a whole bunch of stuff, like he would go to New York and then he went to London, and my spider sense went off. I'm like, ooh, I hope he's not doing that because he thinks that Chicago isn't enough, because that's the thing, is Chicago is really the undiscovered country. Chicago is the last discovery of America. People have no idea the mining that has not happened in the culture and the history of our city. That's been done in New York. That's been done in LA. That's been chronicled in media for both of those great cities that I love both of them. But it hadn't been done in Chicago. And then one day this guy drops a video talking about how he's moving his production to New York. And the reason he's moving his production to New York, as is his right, he's a free American. He can do whatever he wants. Talented dude. But then proceeded to say out loud in his video that he's like, I've been working really hard for the past 2.5 years, and I don't feel like I'm really getting the love back from Chicago. And the minute I heard that, I was simultaneously sick to my stomach, heartbroken, and furious. And I'm like, motherfucker, 2.5 years. Yeah. It takes years to build any business, and it certainly takes years to build a brand. And I'm like, look at your views. You have tens of thousands, 200s of thousands of views. I'm in love with you. My family, who ain't even from Chicago, is in love with you. Yeah. We're sharing your shit all the time. And now you have the nerve to come to me as your loyal viewer who has been pushing your stuff, a subscriber. Oh, it wasn't enough? Oh, dude, I was so angry. I was so hurt. And I unsubscribed. And I got everybody I knew, all my friends in Chicago and my family outside Chicago, to do the same. I've never seen such a tacit admission of entitlement in my life. And it sucks because the guy did good work. And why you would want to tell an entire fan base of an entire city that they ain't been doing enough for you, I don't know why. And he did a follow-up video talking about how everybody unsubscribed and how they lost viewers and they lost subscribers. I'm like, well, again, what's my point in this? my point in this is everything that we've been talking about, this great groundswell, this great cultural moment that, as far as I'm concerned, is just the beginning.
Oh,
There
yeah.
is a rebirth of knowledge and awareness of Chicago that we ain't even scratched the surface of this sucker yet.
No.
And this dude took himself out.
Yeah.
You know, it's I one of the reasons I love you guys so much is no one who is a fair weather friend, a fair weather lover of Chicago goes to the granularity and the depth that you all do. And that's why I know I can talk to you guys about surface stuff. I can get deep. And that's why it means so much to me as a Chicagoan, knowing that you guys are ride or die for Chicago. Because
So the
we
wheels
can't
fall off.
afford, we can't afford you. And again, that's why I'm not using this dude's name. We can't afford if you ain't in. You know, you can acknowledge the flaws, you can acknowledge the greatness, but motherfucker, you know, you're either in it or you're not.
Yeah.
And we ain't got room for people who are fair weather. I'm sorry.
Well, you know what's interesting about that is that's just history repeating itself. Realistically, like think about how New York and LA know that this is a treasure trove. They know it, right? And so the moment that they could catch somebody teetering or wavering just a little bit, there's the here's this new carrot on the stick. And we'll entice you to come, you know, our way. And you know, like you said, if you fair weather, you know what I mean, you're gonna fall for that trick all the time. But the crazy part about that is that we talk about New York and LA kind of like they gas themselves up. Anytime New York is anywhere and there's multiple New Yorkers in a room, they kind of like clump together real quick, right?
Sure.
You know, wherever they are. When Chicagoans are in another location, we do the same thing, but ours is in defense of somebody else that just said, "Hey, aren't you from Al Capone's town?" Which is dumb. You know, like, aren't you from the you know, the deep dish town and you know all that kind of stuff. You know, there's no celebrate Chicago like how, oh, you New York, oh, big city, big this and talk, you know, like when realistically Chicagoans, we have that same thing and we're already on the defense, you know, kind of, you know, at the start of a meeting, you know.
I absolutely agree with you. I would say though, I have noticed in the past couple of years that changing. I have noticed when I first came to LA, I swear to God this happened. When I first came to LA, one of the things, because I came here as an actor, they really love Chicago actors because we literally do the work and go the fuck home. Chicago actors, like if you know anything about Chicago actors, you know about the Chicago theater scene, you know about, you know, folks that came up, whether it be John Malkovich or Laurie Metcalf or whoever. These are folks that just do their work and go home. These are not people who are A-list. These are not people that are in celebrity news. They're not on Access Hollywood. They're not on TMZ. And none of that. We just do our thing and we go home. And because of that, casting loves us. But in general, like I've been in places that are considered rough parts of LA, which aren't. Again, there's parts of LA that are in the same boat as Chicago. And like that's the thing now. I'm kind of from two places now. So I will defend the death parts of LA like I do Chicago because they're getting a bad rap because they're a brown community that doesn't have a bunch of capital behind it. So we're just going to assume arbitrarily that it's a bad neighborhood when it isn't. And oh, by the way, you've also never been there. Interesting. You know so much about East LA. You know so much about Southgate. You know so much about South Central. You know so much about Austin. You know so much about Inglewood, but you ain't never been there. So I have to. I get real defensive. And there's a respect there for Chicago, especially because one of the things someone told me, where the hell was I? Damn it. I might have been downtown LA. And somebody heard me talking to somebody and like, hey man, where are you from? I said, I'm from Chicago. It's like, I knew it. I'm like, okay, what does that mean? It's like, no, you just really cool. You came in here, you're just really respectful. It's like, you know, you guys get a bad rap, but you all are good people. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
You know, so to those, it is changing. You know, obviously we still have to get in rooms where we got to armor up and we got to be like, no, you got it all wrong. but there is a sea change, and I find it's coming from individuals or communities that really relate to what it's like to, no matter how effing hard you do the right thing and how hard you work, some folks are just going to paint you a certain way. And that's changing. There's a solidarity between, I think, people who are from those, again, the communities that continue to get the shit end of the stick when there's no reason to, that are recognizing. Game recognizes game at this point. And I'm seeing that in pockets. And so it is changing, man. It is changing.
It's very much changing.
Sure.
It's changing. But again, it all comes down to, like Sarah said earlier, it's this new class of like social media influencers that are kind of coming up and kind of talking about this, everything Chicago has going on. And I think that makes our responsibility, specifically Sarah and I, even more important in our role in this whole part. Never once did we say, hey, look, this is what we wanted. We just, we wanted date night for each other, right? To like learn, and what I mean? But now that quickly changed once you realize, and honestly, once you start talking to people, in the community areas, you realize they are looking for somebody that's going to spread a good message. There was this one very specific time that I'll never forget. We were out, and the people, as saw Sarah and I with the camera, right, and the neighbors, right, in the community, they asked, is this going to be on the news? Because this needs to be on the news. And Sarah and I were like, unfortunately, it's not going to be on the news. And I think at the time we had like 3,000 followers and X amount of downloads on platforms, right? All we can say is like, we're definitely going to tell the message. But that moment right there personally stuck with me, because you realize these people are literally asking for people to put good news out there about where they come from, and not to have them sound like animals and whatever the the media is trying to put on them. And I think I said the last episode that when I did the Christmas shoot for Rage, that was literally like 2 blocks, if that, from my old house. And I'm sitting there watching. I remember texting Sarah and I said, man, it's so beautiful to see. Not that I don't know, but like I was thinking about it, like, man, look at these people who don't have a care in the world at this moment, but there's somebody in a suburb or somebody across the country that's just talking about them right now, and they don't even know. And I think that's the part when people just loosely shoot off at the mouth, you're talking about somebody that you don't even know that hears that, and they're affected by that, because they got to wake up and live what you think they're going through, and it's important for us to tell a true story and tell an accurate
that's
story.
why you guys win. I think that's why you guys have grown so fast, is because first of all, y'all are just being yourselves. So that first, you're authentic, you're genuine, you're real. Number one, you've already won there.
Funny.
2, what's that?
Don't forget funny.
Oh, incredibly funny. Oh, and brilliant and beautiful. Absolutely. Let's cross off all of those marks. Absolutely. Absolutely. And chic. So you guys, what is leading so much of it? Like, what drew me, again, in the very beginning, okay, yeah, you guys were finding your footing, but what drew me to you guys initially was, here were just 2 real people, real Chicagoans, just talking about their love for their city and their love of the places where they eat and the history of it. That was enough for me. And then I've watched the whole thing grow, where you guys going out, to big venues and covering projects and interviewing people and all of that. That's completely authentic. And then you have your experiences with people from the neighborhoods, the appetite for people to, the desire and the appetite for people to want to see their communities as they see them is so powerful and untapped that you can't help but win, because it's a truth that's not been previously exhibited. And that's why you guys are doing it. Like, you don't even have to work that hard other than show people what's going on. And that's the beautiful part of it, is you don't have to dress it up. You just literally can have conversations over food with people,
Yeah.
and that sells itself. And
Yeah. I think that's the cool thing, what you said there, and I hadn't thought about it. But we don't have to do much, to make Chicago look any kind
It's
of
really
way.
not that hard.
It's not that hard.
no,
It's more of a wormhole because the history is cool
So
and it's
much.
fun and there's so much of it.
right,
But as far as trying to, somebody once told us,
We'll throw a pin and
yeah,
land on some cool shit.
well, somebody
oh yeah,
somebody once said in a comment that here's more Instagram influencers trying to beautify the city and like gloss over, and we're like, no, we're not. No,
We've talked about all the
first of all, go listen to the podcast, and
right,
you'll hear a whole bunch more than 45 seconds, right?
right,
But also at the same time, even if we did, like, we didn't do that. We just retold you something that is beautiful. Like
right,
how Chicago started is a beautiful thing. There's even beauty in the struggle and the pain.
right,
One of the things I've been saying lately, which is just a crazy, mind-blowing thought process, is that the year 1865 that slavery ended is the year that the stock markets, the stockyards opened up, December 25th, 1865. So meanwhile, you're celebrating quote unquote freedom, because we know about that.
right.
You're also celebrating what Chicago didn't even realize was the start of another almost 100, actually more than 100 years,
Yes.
right.
106 years, of a story that helped change the world.
Being the hog
Right.
butcher
Yeah,
world.
so
Right.
like when you think about the juxtaposition of that, the pain, and then something that's growing, like
Right.
that's also the beauty in Chicago, is that you have so many of those moments,
Right.
but then how we've overcome so time after time after time again,
Yeah.
and I think that's where people need to like really understand. The media is going to steer you in the wrong direction, right?
Yeah.
And here's the crazy part. Doing research, I'm looking for it, like I got it up here, but the research shows you that Chicagoans don't even tell the whole history. The people that came before Sarah
Right.
and I,
Mhm.
we have. There's no reason why Sarah and I, with no historical education, should be coming through right now and doing jobs that
Right.
are already laid out and people get paid thousands and millions of dollars to do. You know what I mean? And yet we have to fight with other entities to get our name out there. You know what I mean? Like, so it's crazy how we have to help ourselves also, as much as
No,
the media is
exactly.
doing it. Yeah.
Why
That
did you
is
pick
that
the
is the
topic? We're
key.
gonna
Is
talk about this for hours.
yeah, no, and that's the thing. Is like the gears are in motion
Yeah.
of people, everyday Chicagoans, realizing it's like, look, maybe my local government won't listen to me. Maybe I'm not going to get help from the local media, but I can band together with people in my neighborhood, and I can do at least something, and I can help beautify my neighborhood.
Right.
I can help emphasize the greatness of my neighborhood. And again, what makes me really just truly excited about all of it is that, unlike LA or New York,
Mhm.
Chicago's cultural excavation
Mm.
for the world is
Yes.
just at its beginning.
Ooh.
They know little bits and pieces. They know there was a fire. They know about the cow. They know about I might know about our food scene. They might know about like Al Capone, but largely they don't know as much as they know about maybe other cities. And that's, we're at the precipice. We're at the beginning of all of that.
Right.
And that's what I think is most exciting about that. Like, you literally, I cannot, like, I think, for example, Chicago historian Dilla, that we all know and love on the South Side, who does specific South Side tours.
Mhm.
I couldn't imagine that happening when I was a kid. And now it's something where it's like people are just deciding, you know what, no one else is going to do this. Screw it. I know this place better than anybody. I'm just going to do it myself. And they're winning. I love it.
And the other cool thing is, like you said, we're just at that breaking point where it's about to, all the news is about to come out and it's about to be positive about Chicago. We're almost there. Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood is now a national heritage site,
Awesome.
and for the next 15 years. So you can only imagine the news and the stories and the fun things that's about to come out of that.
Right.
But then also, when you hear when the world starts to realize how important Chicago is and how much of a chess piece Chicago is to kind of the rest of the world,
Oh
it's
yeah.
almost like we're the queen. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like the queen on the chessboard. You take what happens when the queen is called, right? It's the things stop, the game ends, right?
Right.
And Chicago is that piece right there where the trade routes come through here, the plane routes come through here, the entertainment, the food,
Time
people,
zone.
time zones. You know what I mean? Like it's people come here because you realize, hey, look, there's this central location in the United States that is a safe haven historically for my people. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like,
Right.
I have, descendants that left from or ancestors that left from here to go make something, and this is where they came.
Right.
And that once that breaks, then you'll start to see, all the different stories and the news and try to change tunes. And one thing about Chicagoans, we got a very good memory, right? We got
Yeah.
we got a good memory. We're not gonna let you forget about it. You know what I mean?
Well, it's ultimately Chicago for me. It's ultimately like to your point. Whether you're talking about the Great Migration, you
Mm,
talk about
mm,
our literally rolling up our sleeves while the embers from the Great Chicago Fire were still burning. You think about like I think about both sides of my family and where they immigrated from, literally coming from places where they couldn't even farm anymore,
yeah, right.
or trying to escape political persecution or different types of persecution. And literally, they're like, okay, there's this place called Chicago.
Yeah.
You have to cross an ocean. We can't guarantee uh, what's going to be there, but there's going to be something there for you.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Chicago story is a story ultimately of hope.
Yes.
That yes,
Sure.
there's challenge, yes, there's heartache, but there's hope around every corner. And I know it sounds hokey, but it's not.
At
It's
all.
not. It's every demographic of person in Chicago has that story of hope. Every single one of us, in so many ways, we
Mhm.
truly are our ancestors' wildest dreams. And
Yes.
those dreams came to fruition in Chicago in,
Yes.
in beautiful ways because it was a place where, okay, you mean to tell me if I work really hard or I can build a business and people will leave me alone? If I just do what I'm about, you mean I can bring my food, I can bring my language, I can bring, and that's okay? Yeah. I mean, come on, man. Can't
You,
beat
you,
it.
yeah, what's interesting, that at the time of the Great Migration, right? 1917, I believe, was the year that the Chicago Defender boldly claimed, "Hey, this day is the Migration Day, Great Northern Migration Day," right? What they did was they took those images, right? And this is how dope Chicago is, that this doesn't get talked about enough, and we need to, be in people's faces about it, because this is literally what happened. Those Pullman porters showed the freed slaves, hey, this is an image of Chicago. Those freed slaves were so excited to leave that they just went anywhere, right? They got on the train. They would
Right.
take those images and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this," and they would be in New York.
Right.
They would be in LA. They would be somewhere else because they didn't know. They just knew, I want to go here. That's how
Right.
dope Chicago is that we had that look and that destination. We still have that look and that destination of, I want to go there. To your point about the song, people looking at the thing because of the song and all the images, a lot of people are like, "Hey, I want to go there." Who wouldn't want to go to? You
Right.
can have city, you can have city life from eight in the morning to 5 at night in the summertime, and then from 5:30
To
to like
like 9.
9 o'clock,
Yeah.
you are living a beach life, and then
Mhm.
going to drink and party again.
Oh, yeah.
It's just
And
a,
art
yeah,
and
and art,
music and
Yes.
everything in between.
nature
You
and
can pack in
really
so
everything.
much in such a short amount of time. I remember when I first brought a couple of my nieces and nephews to Chicago, and again, they're Californians, so they think they have everything, and they have a lot. But remember when we're flying in, they're like, "Wait a minute, you guys have beaches?" I'm like, "Yeah, yes, we have
Yeah,
beaches."
yeah,
And not only can you go from the beach, we can go from the beach to the
Mhm.
Art Institute
Mhm.
yeah.
to the South Shore,
Mhm.
get pizza,
Mhm, mhm.
come back, clean up, and then walk around the Gold Coast and make fun of rich people. I mean, we are, first of all, the planning of our city. You can't beat it, and I know that
Yeah.
New York has a similar thing, but the density of buildings in New York, it's for me too close. Chicago, our skyscrapers, everything's spread apart. We have alleys, so we don't have to put our garbage out in front every day. You literally can have 3 seasons in a day. You can experience, like you said, Sarah, you can get art, food, culture, and fresh air in half a day. Tell me another place in the world where you can get that.
Yeah. Like as far as our city planning is concerned, that everything about Chicago was intentional, especially when you get this, new life after 1871. You know what I mean? Like you get a brand new life to say, hey, look, this is how we're going to do it now. And I think that's a really cool thing, that our lakefront, right? There's no obstruction to the lakefront. Like it's free and open for everybody. You can it don't matter who you are, you can run, play, and have fun there, because we want to enjoy our city. Even our flag was done with the most intention that we were going to be great at some point. They had 1 star. Yeah, they had 1 star on it, 2 stars, and said, we're going to put them far off to the left because there's going to be 2 other stars in case they want to add it later on. Like, Chicago has always had this confidence about itself that we are going to be something, and that doesn't change. You know what I mean? Like Sarah and I just, the 2021, circa 2021 versions of that plan of Chicago, and trying to get that message out there. And I think a lot of people have asked us, or wonder, probably not asked, but what's next for 77? We say, because we know it's out there. It's not gonna stop. You know what I mean? Chicago is like endless. I mean, like there's so many things that we, haven't talked about, so many things we haven't done, so many people we haven't talked to.
Stories
so
told.
And so this if we have another 187 years of Chicago history, and we can
we
talk
won't
to
be
people.
alive.
Yeah, right.
I know.
But at some point somebody's going to carry that on. That'll be the new tone and the new precedent. Instead of the media coming for our necks, it'll be, hey, it's fun to talk about all the cool things. And then what happens when fun turns to something tangible? Now let's do something cool in Chicago. Like let's build this thing specifically in Chicago because it's the hot new thing. It's the hot new girl in school. So let's go ahead and build it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, this is the 2 things that have come to mind here. And one thing, and it's something that I've been aware of at least probably since my 20s, is one thing Chicago has always had going for it. In addition to what you say about our mindset, we're always forward thinking. We are more ambitious than I think we get credit for.
Yeah.
But I think part of what fuels that is that we are a beacon, not to just the greater Midwest, but we're a beacon to people who want a new start or have ideas. We're also a very young city. It's been for like 25 years. We are a city, like 60% of our population is under the age of 40, like 18 to 40-year-old people. So there's a vivacious, energetic, forward-thinking, fun, we can do it ethic of Chicago that frankly probably stretches back to before, like you said, the fire. It's a can-do attitude that everybody kind of has. And now from where I'm looking in terms of media beyond news, so a show like I've been waiting for The Bear, the TV show The Bear. I didn't realize how much I had been waiting for that show. You have a show that one is written by and show run by actual Chicagoans.
And they did so much research.
Yeah.
Oh my God, they dug so deep. Just the everyday like them talking about who was the greatest White Sox player. Just the everyday conversations characters would have. That I'm watching this, I'm like, wow, they actually cared. They actually cared enough to research on us when portraying us.
Yes.
And not only that level of detail, but incredible characters, incredible hopeful story arcs, winning, while showcasing the culture. And then it becomes the hottest thing on television. And they were able to do it without us being cops or firefighters. Nothing against those shows, but where is so much of Chicago culture is in our kitchens. so much of Chicago culture is in the people from the neighborhoods, and that's what that show was. And I feel like, again, like what y'all are doing, what I guess all of us are doing in terms of showcasing Chicago, it's we're at the beginning of the beginning.
Yes.
And I just remind myself that I want the Bear to be on TV for as long as it's good, for as long as it's solid.
Yeah.
But it's a huge deal to have a show like that gave a damn enough that they actually did their homework about us.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's really cool to kind of, have that thought process, in media, mass media, and we kind of reclaim our image that way.
Right.
It's fun to be a part of this, and we can't wait to see what's next.
Yes. This has been remarkably way more optimistic than obviously I know you all are optimists, and I wasn't sure where it was going to go, but this is I'm feeling real good about this. I'm feeling real good about where all of this is going. I'm really optimistic about the future. I'm optimistic about Chicago's future, and I wouldn't be doing this right now if it wasn't for you all. So thank you again.
No, come on, man.
You guys
No,
are
but
great.
your platform is giving Chicagoans, another platform to speak. When those can be, that's tough. You know what I mean? Like that's tough to be just heard without interruption. And so pat yourself on the back, man. Like this is it's a beautiful thing that we all got going on.
Right. In terms of like obviously one of the things you're talking about, the future of 77, just a side question. What do you all think about that potential 78th neighborhood? What are you all hearing about that, and how do you feel about it?
I think it's beautiful to let the city expand, right? I think it's fun. I think it's not too often you get to be a part of history such as this. And
I don't know too much to have an opinion on it.
yeah, well, I mean, all that we know that this is what we feel and this is what we think, right? we think it's a bit of a power play and it's a bit of a sure thing now.
Sure.
With the Sox, with everybody co-signing the Sox
Yeah.
move down to this imaginary community area that isn't even there yet. It almost feels like you're spoiling the plot line without even telling us, which again, all for it. You know what I mean? We just hope that you respect the Chinatown community neighborhood that's right there. You respect the South Loop area that's there, and the waterways and things like that. With if you are indeed about to bring business and a stadium down there,
Right.
let's keep residential at the forefront, right?
Right.
So
It's possible
which is
because they've
possible.
done it in Wrigleyville, so
Yeah.
like we know they can
Sure.
have residential around sports stadium.
But we're excited about it, and to the point we have our domain situation ready just in case. I know that's a question
We
everybody
will
asks.
not be changing our name to
Yeah.
78
Yeah,
Flavors
yeah.
of Chicago, but
Okay.
we have bought the domain
Yeah.
78 Flavors of
Yeah.
Chicago.
So
There
it's
you go.
ours, it is
Well,
ours.
because that was honestly when I heard about that, when I saw it in the news, I'm like, I thought of you guys immediately. I'm like, wait a minute, they're gonna have to completely rebrand. So
No,
I
it's
was
like a whole new business license, and no, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not doing
77
all that
has a ring.
paperwork.
Yeah.
We're
it
not
does.
doing.
It really does. I'm just like, oh
And
man.
people introduce us like, "Hey, this is 77." Like literally,
Right.
that's how people introduce. And I'm like,
I like the prospect of us being nostalgic and
like, remember when it was only
yeah,
77?
right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
It could be years before that's done. I mean, who knows?
Yeah,
I mean,
no, that's true.
Yeah.
And you actually, Daria, you're the first one, because I got I'm family back in Chicago that don't feel great about it, and you actually are the first person that seemed like put a positive spin on it. That you're right that one, it's rare to get a chance to be a part of history, but it also is kind of rare to be in a city that's as old as Chicago, that is as established as Chicago, that is still growing, is still evolving. So that's something we have to keep in mind too. That
Yeah.
we're an established city with an established culture. That doesn't mean we can't continue evolving, right?
I mean, had they built the stadium and not said this is a new neighborhood, the reaction would have been entirely different.
Yeah, it would have
It's
been
just-
bad.
I feel like people just don't like change before it happens.
Yeah.
Like it takes time to adjust. So that's
I'll put a bold claim out there that that might be the fifth star. You never know.
You think they're gonna scoot
I
on
think
some?
I think the stars. If I think it's a thought process that the stars could move, because that's a, like, to our point here. That's a huge moment in Chicago history, because it's such the community area concept is so divisive, and it created
It
a lot
is.
of racial tension.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Its origin, it was
from
racist.
and
The
the
Yeah.
concept.
fact that we can come up with a 78th in the midst of all of that,
Yeah.
like, that is such a bold move.
It
But
is.
if it's embraced with the right attitude, whereas we understand the segregation in Chicago and we're doing something to stop it,
Mhm.
Right.
I think you have a new way of, like, reaching
There's
people and
potential.
and kind of like sending a message of unity in the neighborhood concept. No other
Right.
city has it like Chicago,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so we'd
That's
be the
something
only
too.
city.
That's a really good point.
Yeah,
One of the things that I've noticed too is there are parts of the city, like I remember, growing up, I'd hear, and it's not something I would hear. Oh yeah, so in Bridgeport, the last white stronghold in Chicago. I'm like,
yeah,
what? Why are you bragging about that? Like,
right,
it's a
Yeah.
neighborhood.
yeah,
But
Weird.
but now you have places like Bridgeport that are kind of diverse now. You've
yeah,
got
Yeah.
people, you've got young people, you've got people of Latin and Filipino and Asian descent moving.
There's a lot of great Asian food in Bridgeport, by the way,
Oh,
which is
yeah,
being
yes,
majorly built up.
there
It's
absolutely
really
is.
good.
Chicago, for its segregation history, again, like other cities didn't have
Mhm.
segregation. Again, it's all put on our shoulders.
yep,
For that
Right.
history, we also are home to, yes, Chicago.
Mhm.
Chicago is home to the most diverse zip code in the nation, and that is
Yep.
Albany Park.
yes,
23 languages spoken in just what, the public school system.
yeah,
So again, we uh, we progress
yeah,
and we
Yep.
grow and we do get better, and I'm proud
mhm,
of that.
Yeah.
absolutely. Our
Yeah.
dog is letting us know, hey,
It's
Oh,
he
like it's
said
it's
time.
time.
he said he
No,
said, hey,
I
big
got,
dog,
I
is
got a
food.
couple of pooches here that probably are ready to go. But again, Sarah, Dario, you guys are awesome. Thank you again coming back so soon. I could
Cool.
talk to you guys forever.
Same.
Hopefully
Absolutely.
we'll do this again. Hopefully we'll do this again, maybe over a meal
Let's do, yeah.
in
You
the city. So
do you know when you're visiting soon?
yeah, I'm coming back. I'm trying to get a project going there, so I have an excuse to stay for months. So
Nice.
thank you guys again. Where can everybody find you? And then we'll let you go.
77 Flavors of Chicago is our website. You can look us up on YouTube with that, on podcast with that, and then social media is 77 Flavors Chi, CHI, everywhere. So,
Great.
and then if you want
Thank
to
you.
reach out to us, media at 77flavorsshy.com.
Beautiful. Thank you guys again. Always
Thank
excited
you.
to see what you guys do next. Take care, okay?
Hey, thank you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it, Kyle. Thank you.
Bye.
You.